know that we do live stream the sermon on
Facebook.
On Facebook. Sorry, I'm thinking about 3 different things here at once. On Facebook, and it only shows me. It does not show anybody else. It's just me, my lovely smiling face. So don't worry about being sent out over the internet or anything. And we'll also be live streaming the baptism itself, so that family and friends who weren't able to be here can see it either now or later. But again, that will be all over, right over by the baptismal font. It won't be showing the congregation. So, will you pray with me, please? God of wind and water, God of fire and rainbow, open our hearts and spirits to grace and wisdom and hope. May we see each other as you see us. In all your names, amen.
Amen.
So what we are doing today is the next one in our series this summer about movies. We use movies to illustrate our sermon themes, our message themes for the day, for the week. Last week it was Fellowship of the Ring, and this week it is Simon Birch. Next week it's The Apostle with Richard Dreyfuss, Robert Duvall, which is a fantastic movie if you haven't seen it. But today we're talking about Simon Birch. Now, excuse me, has anyone seen the rest of the movie? No. Anybody seen it? I highly recommend it. I won't tell you everything that happens. I'm not going to give you any spoilers, so I'll try to sort of talk around that. But he is sort of a prophet figure, as you can see from that short clip, or a martyr. He's very good. He's almost impossibly good and nice, and he's a caretaker, in spite of a difficult home life. So I won't tell you the rest of the story, so you can check it out yourself. But in this clip, Simon is being scolded by the Sunday school teacher because he asks questions. He speaks out. He's what she thinks of as a troublemaker. She tells him he doesn't belong in the church. That's one of the saddest lines in any movie I've ever heard, that he doesn't belong in the church. And she also means the town, by the way, because of the way he is, because he's so outspoken and he asks questions, and that he and his family really shouldn't even be there. And that's what the prophet Amos was hearing today too, that he had no right to be saying the things that he was saying, that he was a spy and he was trying to bring down the throne of Israel. And as I told the kids, in those days, prophets weren't supposed to just rise up spontaneously. He was supposed to run in families. And Amos was a farmer. The term in the Bible is a dresser of sycamore trees, pruning and keeping the sycamore trees. He wasn't a legitimate, quote-unquote, prophet. According to the other prophets, he was just a loud one. Gee, where does that sound familiar? They were saying he had no right to be there, prophesying. He didn't belong there. He was an outsider. And then the lawyer, in our reading from Luke, asks the next pertinent question. Typical lawyer. Who does belong? Who is our neighbor? That lawyer's always going to define what definitions of terms, right? So who is our neighbor, the lawyer asks. Trust an attorney. And Jesus does this parable thing that he does so often. He tells a story with a double meaning, meant to illustrate the point that he's making. And those of you who are teachers or who have taught know that this is a good way to get abstract points across, to tell the story. And as the students work on those layers of meaning, they can better understand the point of a story or a concept and relate it to the parts to each other. They internalize it more readily. So it's pretty clear that the Samaritan, who was part of a community that quote-unquote good Jewish people did not associate with, is the only one who is actually a neighbor to that person who was assaulted. It's also true that only the Samaritan saw the person who was assaulted as a neighbor. It went both ways, right? The priest and the scribe didn't see him as somebody to be taken care of, as a neighbor. The injured person shouldn't have been there. How many times do we hear about victim blaming? The Samaritan didn't belong. But to each other, they were neighbors. Both in giving help and in receiving it, they recognized the neighbor in each other. So, who is our neighbor? Well, I think it's pretty clear from that parable that everyone is our neighbor. Everyone. All living things on this planet are our neighbors, and we are theirs. Age, race, gender identity, immigration status, education level, physical or mental ability, neuro ability, color, religious tradition, whether they're incarcerated or free willed, we are all neighbors to each other. In a few moments, we're going to welcome two new brothers to Holy Covenant. They are brothers, but they're also going to be our brothers and our neighbors. They aren't outsiders, they belong here, just like the rest of us. And that was also true before today. Baptism brings them into this particular church and into the Christian community as a whole, but they're already our neighbors. They're not strangers, they're friends and family. And this is one of the most important questions facing us in the world today. I think it's at the basis of a lot of the issues that we face, not only in this country, but around the world. Who are our neighbors? Because once we have decided that, then we know how to treat them. Our modern world is almost obsessed with deciding who is in, who is out, who are the good people and who are not. There's a lot of line drawing around political parties and ideologies, nationality, race, religion, ethnicity. In this parable that Jesus tells, a person was badly hurt and a neighbor helped him. And yet in many places in our country, people who have left food and water for people crossing the border are breaking the law. They're simply trying to help people survive. People will be crossing the border anyway. But they're just trying to help them live. Today, raids are supposed to begin, targeting immigrants from many other countries, some of whom have been trying to obtain legal status for years. And it's not clear if these are actually going to happen. Talk of it maybe simply being a threat to frighten people. But the simple fact is that they are being used as a threat. They are not being treated as our neighbors. They are being told, in effect, you don't belong here, when they have been doing everything they could to belong. Some of them are children and had no choice about being here. And because some people who are in power think they don't belong here, they're put into camps, often separated from their families. We may not be old enough, all of us, to remember the last time nations put people into camps. But we've read the books and seen the movies. We know our history. There are people in prison who've been told the same thing. They shouldn't have been wherever they were or whoever they were, caught in a system that churns up injustice like a whirlpool. Poor education and underfunded schools with overburdened teachers and not enough resources. A lack of employment opportunities when they leave school. High interest rates on student loans for those who can actually make it to higher education. Expensive medical care so chronic illnesses aren't caught in time or aren't treated properly, especially brain illnesses like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. These issues face so many people, and they're intensified for people of color and for people in the LGBTQ community. I want to bring in one more news story. Jeffrey Epstein and his alleged victims. I have to say alleged because he hasn't been convicted yet. He and his associates zoomed in on the most vulnerable girls, the ones who needed someone to care for them, and he pretended that he did, that when they were with him, they belonged. But when they tried to speak out, their voices were silenced by the power of money and influence. They should not have been there. Everyone belongs. There is a place for everyone here. The story of the Good Samaritan was startling to Jesus' Jewish hearers because they were used to thinking of Samaritans as being outsiders, not their neighbors, people who didn't belong in Judea. Who do we think doesn't belong? Many of us have been told that we don't belong, haven't we? In our faith tradition, in our schools, maybe even in our families. That we loved the wrong people, that we had the wrong friends, that our bodies weren't the right shape, or we spoke the wrong language, that we are from the wrong country, or our skin is the wrong color. That we should just try being different, learn another language when we already spoke one fluently. Go to a different church, that there were conditions, in other words, on their love and acceptance, on seeing us as neighbors. And I'll be frank, that felt like crap, didn't it? We are neighbors, you and I, and the guy down the street with the barky dog, and the nosy lady upstairs, and your family, and Jake and Isaiah, and the kids in the camps, and the Presbyterians, and the Roman Catholics, and the Greeks, and the South Africans, and the Brazilians, and people who are incarcerated, and people in care homes, and all of our friends. We are all neighbors. Jesus is telling us to take care of each other. And that means not just the ones next door, not just the ones we know or immediately think of, but all of our neighbors. It's not conditional. Everyone. All our neighbors. The world is our neighbor, and we are God's prophets. In all God's names. Amen.
Amen.